Welcome back, everybody, Gentle Dorks, and taking a break from the superhero movies, are they really that bad? I'm going to give a top 10 list of 10 movies where the remake is actually better. Now, I'm not saying that the originals are bad. What I'm saying is that personally for me, that the remakes surpassed what the original did. I'm not going to go into the movies and why I think that the remake is better. I want you to go judge for yourself. See if you can find these movies, watch the original, watch the remake, and give your own opinion. Because that's why we're here, is to enjoy movies, TV shows, comics, games. We're not here to judge them terribly. We're here to give our thoughts on them. And I hope that's what I've been doing. So, just going to jump straight in. They're not in any particular order. So, it's not that number 10 is the worst of them. It's just, I've made the list. I picked 10 where the remake is better. To me. In at number 10, we have Death Takes a Holiday from 1934. And its remake, which is far superior, is Meet Joe Black from 1998. They're both great movies, but as I say, Meet Joe Black far surpasses what the original done. And I would advise you to go watch them both. The original's from 1934, so it might be a bit difficult for you to find. But if you can find it, look it out. It's a good movie. Meet Joe Black is a better movie. At number 9, we have Little Shop of Horrors. The original from 1960 is a great movie. It's not a musical like the 1986 one. It's a serious movie. It's trying to be a horror. Whereas the musical far surpasses it. Again, I'd advise you to go watch them both. They're both fantastic movies. Tells the exact same story, but the remake does it better. Move on to number 8. And we have the cowboy classic True Grit, the 1969 version with John Wayne, and the 2010 version with Jeff Bridges. Now, I'm not a big John Wayne fan, but True Grit is one of his movies that I can watch, but the 2010 movie just far surpassed the storytelling element of the movie. In the 1969 version, the story was, here's John Wayne playing a cowboy, but he's darker. In the 2010 movie, it's, here's this dark cowboy movie. And that's why I think it far surpasses it. In at number 7, we have Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1956 and 1978. Now, the 1956 one isn't a bad movie. It's a great classic 50s horror movie. You know what you're expecting. It's got the scares where it has to be. And again, it's what you expect from a 50s horror. If you're a horror fan and you know horror through the ages, it fits in perfectly. It's a great horror movie. But the 78 one just had so much more suspense that it draws you in a lot more. Just for the ending alone, that end scene far surpasses anything. It is one of the greatest endings of a horror movie out there, and I would advise you to go and watch them both. In at number 6, we have Man on Fire from 1987 and 2004. This is essentially a straight remake of the movie. Some differences, but not that many. The 1987 is a good movie. It's your typical shoot 'em up type movie from the 80s. But what the 2004 movie done was it got the character more emotionally involved, especially with the cast differences. With the original, you had people like Scott Glenn and Joe Pesci, and these were fantastic in their roles. But with the 2004 movie, you had Denzel Washington and Christopher Walken, and it just came across as a more intense movie. The 1987 movie is a great movie. It's just it was far surpassed by the 2004 remake. And at number 5, we have 3:10 to Yuma. The original's from 1957 and the remake was from 2007, so 50 years of a difference. The original, for me, I think was very slow paced and takes a long time to tell the story. Whereas the remake, there was so much more happening. The story is more on point and the characters are more developed than with the original. This is the only one where I'm not as big a fan of the original. I was struggling whether to put this one on the list, but I thought it is an okay movie. It's very of its time, whereas the remake is quite an underrated classic, I'd say. So go look them out and let me know what you think. In at number 4, we have Scarface from 1932 and 1983. These are like two separate movies. It doesn't feel like it's a remake. The story is the exact same, but what they'd done with the 1983 one was they made it a movie about gangsters and drugs, whereas the 1932 movie played down the gangs and the drugs, and so it feels like it's not a remake, but it is the same exact story, and I can tell you it is a remake. But the Al Pacino Scarface far surpasses the original by thousands and millions. But again, I'm not saying the original's a bad movie. It's from 1932. They'd done what they'd done with what they had. It was a great movie for the time, but it was far surpassed by the remake. If you can find the original, go watch it, especially if you've seen Scarface from 1983, and you will see that it's the exact same story, but the way they tell it in the 80s is so much better. And at number 3, we have Ocean's 11 from 1960, which starred the Rat Pack, and then we have the 2001 version starring George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, and Matt Damon, amongst others, obviously. But the original was essentially just the Rat Pack wanting to make a movie set in Las Vegas so they could get drunk in Las Vegas. It's not a bad movie, despite Frank Sinatra's acting ability not being the best. He played himself in the movie, which was great for that movie, and it worked for that movie. But with the 2001 version, it seemed like the cast had more chemistry than what the original cast did, and these guys were supposed to be actually friends, and the story is a lot more solid in the remake. If you haven't seen the original, I'd go look it out. It's a good film, it's very 60s, and it shows you exactly how the Rat Pack were. We'll move on from that one, because I can talk about the differences and the ups and downs of both of them for ages, but we'll move on. In at number 2, we have The Fly from 1958 and 1986. Now, I love both the movies. The original is very 50s sci-fi movie. Very, very heavily influenced by all the other movies that were coming out at that time. But if you were watching this in the 50s and you had never seen anything like this before, you would be freaking out. It was a trendsetter for horror sci-fi movies. Nobody had done anything like it, and then people tried to replicate what that done. And then we get to the remake in 1986. It was just so disgusting. If you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I've seen that movie hundreds of times. I can't count the amount of times I've seen The Fly. And every time I watch it, it gets more disgusting every time I watch it. But I'll never stop watching it. It far surpassed what the original story told. Modernised it, brought it into more sci-fi horror, whereas the original was more horror sci-fi. This is a year where so many more horror movies were coming out, and it even surpassed them. Jeff Goldblum was amazing in that movie, and it's one of the roles that will always stick out in my head for him because the movie was fantastic, and it will always be in my top 10 of sci-fi horror movies out there. But on that note, we'll move on to number 1, The Thing from Another World from 1951 and The Thing from 1982. The original is a great sci-fi movie for the time. Watching it now, I think it still has stood the test of time. It is a timeless sci-fi classic, but The Thing just far surpasses, even with the book that they're based on, it surpasses that. It is one of, if not my favourite horror sci-fi movie, and I can't say this enough, but you should always have this on your list of things to watch before you die. This is one of these movies that needs to be watched. But on that note, I shall love yous and leave yous, and as always, see ya.